What is it you've liked best? What is it you've liked least? Corey Clark's opinion of camp before the first scrimmage tomorrow night.
Oh, it's a good question. I think just relative to what the position has been for so long around here, linebacker.
There you go.
I think linebacker. Offensive line, I still can't foresee them being a good unit. I foresee them being much better than they've been. But would you classify it as like one of the best in the ACC? I don't know. I think maybe if the linebackers stay healthy and Deloach takes the step that I think he's going to take, along with having somebody like Bethune in there who just makes these instinctual plays, especially in the running game I shouldn't even say in the running game because he's broken up some passes too. He understands the sport. He's a linebacker. And if you've watched enough football, you know what that means. He just makes plays. He's around the ball. If Deloach keeps progressing like he did last season, I don't know, Jeff, do you have one of the better starting linebacker duos in the conference at least?
I think you got a good one, Corey, and we couldn't say that for a very long time. I'll answer the first part of your rhetorical there, which is to tell you, no, this is not one of the best offensive lines in the ACC.
But better relative to what it's been. A lot better, I think.
Well, okay, relative to what it's been, I'm going to go with much better.
Yeah.
Good? No, I can't get you to good. But I can get you to much better than last year because I actually think they're going to continue to improve as camp goes along because some other kids are emerging. You know how high I am on Estes, and he continues to play well. And I don't know. I look at that, and I don't sit here and say, well, that means he's going to start. No, I mean that if he has to play, they're not going to fall off a cliff. And you know, and I know when guys went down to injury or missed a series or a half or a game, you were pretty well screwed if any of the starters had to go out last year. I don't think that's the case this year.
Yeah, and 2 years ago, you had, 3 freshmen starting? Like a majority, like Robert Scott was thrown in and started a lot of games. Darius Washington started a lot of games as freshmen. That probably won't happen this year, even though I think these freshmen are more talented than Robert Scott and Darius Washington were 2 years ago. They're more ready, I guess. And I bring that up because I don't know if you had a chance to watch Fabian Lovett's interview yesterday, but I would strongly encourage everyone watching this. After this is done, of course, don't stop watching JCS. I mean, were you crazy? But after that's over at 3:02, go click on the Fabian Lovett interview on the Warchant TV site and go to the end because I asked him who among the young linemen had stood out, and I threw Bryson Estes out there, knowing he had competed against him a lot. He avoided that one altogether and went straight to Julian Armella and said, that guy is different. He goes, that guy, he's fit in right away with his physicality. He loves him as a player. He loves him as his potential. And I've done this long enough to know that defensive linemen aren't always about giving roses to offensive linemen on their own team, especially the guys they compete against. But Fabian Lovett went out of his way to say this guy's going to be a real player. And he was really impressed with him. Like, it was unsolicited. I didn't ask him, hey, what do you think about Julian Armella? I just asked him about younger offensive linemen in general, and he went right to that guy and said that he thinks he's going to be a really good player, and he's really, really impressed with how he's fit in. And that says a lot coming from a guy that's been playing football now for, at this level, 4 or 5 years. So that was really encouraging because I think we've seen it too, Jeff, a little bit. Armella's got a little, as the kids like to say, a little dog in him.
Yeah, got a little dog in him. He's nasty.
I mean, he does not mind getting physical with Jared Burris off the edge. He is not afraid, and he does not back down. And that's something this offensive line is needed for eons. And he and maybe some of these other young guys will bring that.
Yeah, they have. And this is a thing. Offensive line, to answer somebody in the chat, takes time. Look, they are well coached, very well coached. But they're trying to bring in a better caliber of player to coach up, and not just try to make something work with what they have. They're trying to get better. The quality of the dough, as I like to say. You know, they're doing a better job of getting those kinds of players in here over the last 2 years. So now what you'll see, because Atkins is a good coach, and because he's very, very good at both motivation and also teaching, you're going to see this group be a strength of the team. I think going into next year and the year after, they'll be a strength of the team. I just don't think that they're quite there yet. But I do believe they're well ahead of where they were the last 2 years. There's no doubt about that. And as far as Armella goes, good point to bring that up because Fabian Lovett is as good as there is on this defensive line and is as good as there is on the defensive line in the ACC.
Yeah.
Not just for – he's a star. So his words mean something. He's also would you say I think he's my favorite player to watch because of his zeal for the game. Like, that guy is fun. He's also gigantic and dominating. but he loves to play. He sets a good example. I know that's cheesy, but man, that guy loves to practice. There's not too many guys that big who work every rep that hard and then seem like they're just having fun, like they're a kid.
Yeah, and you hope that by osmosis, the guys behind him pick up on that, and he can, when he won't be here next year, but maybe these guys can keep practicing like Fabian Lovett practices. And going back to the offensive line and linebacker, really, you hear about somebody like Julian Armella, and it's like, okay, he's probably not going to play a lot this year, you wouldn't think. But what does that do just for the room? The competition, not just in the room, like, Robert Scott or people like that will be pushed. Like, there are guys coming. Bryson Estes will push somebody, and they can't just show up and play, poorly on a Saturday and think they're an automatic slated to start the next week. There's real competition now, which, again, iron sharpens iron, my man. It's just what it does. And I think they have that going at offensive line. I think they have that going at linebacker. I think really they have it going at virtually every position, which, again, was not the case a year ago, 2 years ago. Some of these players knew, even if they played horribly, if they played like ass, as Jeff Cameron likes to say, they were still going to play the next week. I don't know if there's anybody on this team now that if they play poorly 1 or 2 weeks in a row, they're not being pushed by someone of pretty decent caliber to take their job.
I said to Tom earlier that the number one thing I get excited about with this camp from the previous year, the year before, is something akin to what you're talking about right now, which is the fact that you can look at entire segment groups and say, that's an above average group, or at least above average in the ACC. That's a group that isn't going to get bullied. There's a group that can win you some games. Not all of them. You can't say about every group. There are some weaknesses. This team is not a national championship contender. I don't think they're a contender to win the ACC. But, man, we couldn't say that. I'm not sure we could say that about a single segment group, Corey. 2 years ago, I don't think we could have. I'm not.
Well, we did because we said the defensive line 2 years ago.
Well,
and that was an abject horror show 2 years ago.
Right. And we ended up seeing a couple of reasons why. But the point would be, so we were wrong. But there wasn't, and you had to pick one area and say it was a strength, and that was the area we picked, and it was logical to do so. A couple of guys had devastatingly bad years. But I would suggest now that you could, with a straight face and not have to throw out any caveats, say that the defensive line is really good. The interior of the defensive line is really good.
The interior, I think, especially those two starters, the edge is still a question mark, a big one. They made plays. Briggs, I thought had his best practice on Thursday. He was all over the football, which is good to see because
he's only going to get stronger.
Yeah, and they think he's going to be special. They've said it multiple times that he's a special player. Burst is just his own unique person. I'm really interested to see how he does in actual games with more than 800 people in the stands. And then, the backups, I still worry about the backups really across the front. I think they're better. Jared Jackson can be a player, but on the edge, there's not, McClendon, I guess, or Briggs. One of them will be a backup, and then Peyton will be the other. You just got to develop some depth. But, yeah, man, I think the interior of the defense is good all across the board. If you just go up the middle, those two tackles are good football players. I think those two linebackers are good football players. And I think, again, you might have one of the best safety duos in the conference. I think up the middle, for the first time in a long time, I think you're really strong. And Jamie Robinson's one of the best defensive players in the conference. Maybe Tatum Bethune is too. Akeem Dent looks like a different guy than he did a year and a half ago. So you feel good about that. I think you asked me at the beginning what I maybe and still not feeling great about. And it's, I'm not putting on any one player or group. It's just the passing game. It's only 8 days, and they've had some moments, but the passing game still leaves you wanting for a variety of reasons. Sometimes the throws aren't on time, they're not accurate, and sometimes the balls are being batted down like the receivers or DBs. That's something I really want to see pick up in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, and I've concluded that it's not going to be the strength of the team. So they'll play to running the football, and they should because that's.
But you can't be awful at it. Last year, they were awful at it. I don't know what they averaged passing. I think it was like 180 yards a game or some nonsense, especially when Jordan played. You can't do that in 2022. You can't throw for less than 200 yards of offense and be a good offense. You can win some games. You can't be a good offense. They have to figure out a way to get some balance. You figure they're going to try to run for 200, especially if their quarterback's running for 60 or 70. But you've got to throw for 200 too. You've got to get some balance there and get some real and have a little bit of precision passing game where it's not always just big plays. And then if it's 3rd and 8, you might as well punt.
We're in agreement, brother. He's Corey Clark. Wake Up Warchant, lead writer for warchant.com.